Sergeant Mike Bulldog Brennan checked the seals on his combat exosuit for the third time as the drop pod hurtled through space towards the massive Krol'thar space station orbiting Epsilon Crucis 4. His HUD showed all systems nominal, and his squad's biomonitors blinked green, indicating they were prepped and ready. But he couldn't shake a sense of unease as he gazed out the reinforced viewport at the rapidly approaching alien structure. The Krol'thar Empire had overrun most of the Orion Arm in the past 2 years with their advanced tech and sheer numbers, pushing humanity and its allies to the brink. This joint op with the Saurians and Azu was a desperate play captured the strategically vital communications hub and turned the tide of the Galactic War. Or die trying. 60 seconds, the robotic voice of the drop pod AI intoned. Prepare for landing. The interior lights switched to amber. Brennan clenched his jaw and gripped his pulse rifle tighter. He glanced at his squad mates strapped into their crash seats, Green, Alvarez, Ishikawa, and Davis. All damn good Marines. All depending on him to lead them through the chaos ahead and keep them alive. He opened a squad comlink. Listen up. Stay tight, check your corners, watch your sixes. We do this quick and clean. Get eyes on that primary target fast as we can and lock it down. Wait for my signal before engaging. And conserve ammo, we're going to be in the shit a long time before evac. Any questions? Just one, Sarge Private Davis quipped, the rookie on his first drop. We getting hazard pay for this one. Brennan chuckled despite himself. You can file a grievance with the LT after we get back. Until then, can the chatter and get your game face on. We're going in hot. The pod shook as the retro thrusters ignited, slowing their descent. With a bone-jarring thud, it slammed into the station's hull, the shape charges blowing open a path inside. Explosive bolts blasted the hatch and Brennan was moving, leaping through the smoke and debris into the dim red emergency lighting of the alien corridor, weapon raised. He scanned left and right with the barrel of his rifle. No contacts. Clear. The rest of the squad piled in behind him, taking up defensive positions. Always splits in 50 meters, Ishikawa reported, consulting the schematics on her wrist comp. Left takes us to the main concourse. Right leads down to the reactor level and life support. Brennan nodded. The main concourse was where they'd likely find the heaviest resistance and their objective. We go left. Green, take point. Davis, cover our 6. Let's move. They advanced cautiously, keeping to a staggered column formation. The low thrum of the station's systems and their own muffled footfalls were the only sounds. The Krol'thar should have been swarming all over them by now. Something wasn't right. Suddenly Alvarez hissed over the comm. Contact rear. Multiple targets, closing fast. Brennan spun around. A pack of heavily armed Krol'thar warriors were charging down the hall, hissing and snarling. Their bony, angular faces were twisted with rage, razor-sharp teeth bared. Light him up, Brennan barked. A thunderous barrage of gunfire erupted as the Marines opened up with their rifles, scything through the alien ranks. Pulse rounds tore into flesh and bone in gouts of blood and screams. But the Krol'thar surged forward with single-minded bloodlust, trampling their fallen. Fall back, Brennan ordered. Ishikawa, drop a couple frags, buy us some breathing room. The corporal lobbed 2 grenades. A moment later, twin concussive blasts ripped through the corridor, shredding a dozen aliens into bloody chunks. Acrid smoke filled the air. The Marines took advantage of the momentary reprieve, bounding back to the junction as they fired controlled bursts. As they reached the intersection, Brennan saw movement in his peripheral vision. He snapped his rifle up just as a hulking Krol'thar lunged from the shadows of the left passage, swinging a crackling plasma sword. Time seemed to slow. Brennan felt the searing heat of the blade as it arced toward his faceplate. He twisted aside at the last instant, the plasma scoring his helmet. His shot took the alien clean through its left eye socket and out the back of its skull in a spray of ichor. It crumpled to the deck. "Goddamn," Green said in a shaky voice. "Slippery bastards." "Stay sharp," Brennan growled. He could see dozens more Krol'thar massing at the end of the long hall ahead, preparing to charge their position. "We gotta move. Go right, head for the reactor level. Maybe we can bottleneck these bastards in the tighter spaces." They took off at a run, boots pounding on the metal grating. Pulse fire and alien shrieks echoed behind them as the hostiles gave chase. A glancing shot sparked off Brennan's shoulder pauldron. He gritted his teeth and pushed on. The corridor terminated in a large pressure door, the entrance to the reactor chamber. It was sealed. Davis slapped a breaching charge on the locking mechanism and primed it. Fire in the hole. The Marines stacked up on either side as the rookie thumbed the detonator. The shaped charge blew inward with a muted whump, and they surged through the gap, weapons leveled. They emerged onto a narrow catwalk encircling a huge spherical fusion reactor, pulsing with sickly green light. The only other exit was an open accessway directly across from them, 30 meters away. Defensive positions, Brennan ordered. But before they could dig in, a fearsome roar shook the chamber. Heavy footfalls reverberated through the deck plates. An enormous Krol'thar Alpha smashed through the accessway, ripping away support struts like matchsticks. It had to be 3 meters tall, massively muscled, covered in chitinous armor plates. Its 4 arms wielded a pair of whirring chainblade swords and heavy plasma cannons. Smaller Krol'thar skittered in behind it. "Concentrate fire on the big bastard," Brennan yelled. The Marines unleashed everything they had: pulse rifles, frag and crack grenades, micro-missiles from Davis' shoulder launcher. Most of the ordnance glanced off the Alpha's thick hide or detonated harmlessly against shimmering energy shields. It shrugged off the Marines' fire as it thundered forward and fell upon them like a raging demon. Brennan rolled aside as a chain blade chewed into the catwalk where he'd been a heartbeat before, throwing up a shower of sparks. He popped to a knee and hosing the Alpha with armor-piercing rounds, trying to find a weak spot. But it was no use. The beast's shields shrugged off the hail of bullets. To his left, Brennan saw Davis firing his grenade launcher at the onrushing smaller Krol'thar, desperately trying to stem the tide. A plasma bolt struck the private in the chest, burning clean through his armor. He went down screaming. "Man down," Alvarez cried. Brennan cursed and keyed his comm. Green, Alvarez grabbed Davis and fall back to that accessway. "Ishikawa, with me. We've got to drop this shield." As the other 2 Marines dragged their wounded comrade back, Brennan and Ishikawa dodged and weaved around the Alpha's furious attacks, peppering it with rifle fire and grenades. But nothing seemed to penetrate its defenses. In desperation, Brennan primed a crack grenade and hurled it at the beast's feet. The explosion blew a hole in the catwalk and the Alpha stumbled, flailing for balance. Ishikawa seized the opening, leaping onto its back and slamming an EMP grenade into the crackling field generator between its shoulder blades. The pulse flared and the shield winked out. Brennan unloaded a long burst into the Alpha's broad chest, shredding armor and flesh and bone until his rifle clicked empty. The beast toppled with an earth-shaking crash. No time to celebrate. Dozens more Krol'thar were climbing over their fallen champion, hellbent on vengeance. Brennan slapped his last mag home. "Ishikawa, prep those demo charges and get over here," he commanded. "We're blowing this reactor." The corporal sprinted to his side as Brennan provided covering fire. Together they raced across the catwalk and dove through the accessway. Brennan thumbed the detonator. Behind them, the reactor went up in an eruption of blinding green-white light, vaporizing the Krol'thar and collapsing the chamber in a roar of twisting metal. Brennan and Ishikawa crashed to the decking, shielding their heads as flames rolled over them. As the explosion faded, Brennan staggered upright in the smoky gloom, pulling the corporal with him. The demo charges had blown open a path into the adjacent section. Ahead, he could see Alvarez crouched over Davis, applying pressure to the ghastly wound in the private's chest. Green stood guard. He turned as Brennan approached. "Reactor is toast, Sarge. But Davis isn't going to make it without medevac." Brennan knelt beside the dying Marine, removing his helmet. Davis' face was ashen, flecked with blood. His eyes struggled to focus. "You did good," Rookie Brennan said quietly, gripping his hand. "Real good. Bought us the time we needed." Davis coughed weakly. Did we win?" "Yeah, Private. We're going to win this. You can count on that." A ghost of a smile touched Davis' bloody lips as the light drained from his eyes. His head lolled to the side. Brennan exhaled heavily and closed the boy's eyes. He looked up at the surviving members of his squad, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, their eyes hard and full of sorrow. "Marines, consolidate ammo and gear. Treat any wounds. We are preceding the objective. This station falls today if we have to kill every last ugly Xenosanuva bitch on it. Davis bought our ticket in there with his life. We collect on that debt. Move out." They assembled into tactical formation without a word. Brennan took point this time, leading them down the debris-strewn corridor towards the main concourse. Muffled pulse fire and faint screams echoed through the bulkheads, reminding them they weren't the only ones fighting and dying across the vast station. After several tense minutes, they emerged into the cavernous central hub easily a kilometer long and a dozen decks high. Massive structural supports crisscrossed the space, and ornate columns stretched to the arched ceiling far above. The walls were lined with esoteric Krol'thar computer systems, winking with myriad lights. And everywhere, battle raged. Hundreds of allied soldiers, humans, saurians, and Aidzu were entrenched behind hastily erected barricades or the bulky forms of heavy weapons platforms, pouring fire into masses of Krol'thar warriors that swarmed from every hatch and accessway. The cacophony of Xeno-war cries, human shouts, and the bark of weapons was deafening. Brennan spotted a Saurian officer trying to coordinate the chaos. He grabbed the lizard man's shoulder. Sitrep, he had to shout to be heard. The Saurian major flashed sharp teeth in what might have been a grim smile. "We've secured about 30% of the concourse. Primary computers on the far side. Heavy enemy resistance. Your shuttle crash arrival drew a lot of heat off us, bought precious time. My deep thanks." "Thank us if we live through this," Brennan replied. "What's the plan?" "Push forward to main control point. Interface with system. Transmit virus to cripple network. Fleet mops up the rest." Brennan nodded. 100 meters of open deck lay between them and the objective, a heavy blast door set into the far wall. Marines were on point. Punch a hole, make path for the flankers. Stay low, conserve ammo. He shouldered his way to the front of the barricade, his squad fanning out to either side. He sighted down his rifle at a cluster of Krol'thar, put the red dot to an alien center mass. They poured fire into the hostiles, sending broken bodies tumbling. An instant later, the Saurians and Aidzu troopers were moving up on the flanks, laying down a hail of suppressing fire. The enemy line buckled. Advance by teams, Brennan ordered. Overlapping fields of fire. Go. They leapfrogged forward, one element covering the other. Brennan put a burst into a Krol'thar that popped up from behind a pillar to his left. To his right, Ishikawa and a fire team of Aidzu scuttled behind a shattered column, raking the enemy. All along the line, Krol'thar fell before the Allied troops, driven back in a welter of blood. But they surged forward again and again with no regard for their mounting casualties, heedless in their fanaticism. For every one the Allies cut down, 3 more seemed to appear, boiling out of branching halls and maintenance tubes. Brennan's rifle ran dry, and he slapped his last mag home. Make 'em count. An explosion thundered behind him, sending humans and Xenos alike sprawling. The whine of straining ag generators filled the air as the Krol'thar brought their heavy platforms to bear, raking the concourse with searing white plasma fire. Men and women and Saurians and Aidzu screamed and burned and died. Brennan saw Alvarez go down, his shoulder a charred ruin. A Saurian trooper expired beside him in a bloody heap, its elongated skull blown open. Brennan returned fire grimly, covering a medic as she dragged Alvarez to safety. Ahead, the main control room blast door lay tantalizingly close, less than 20 meters now. So near and yet impossibly far, a no-man's land of torn metal and body parts and shrieking forces of annihilation. But they had to reach it, had to end this slaughter and cripple the enemy. Sarge, it was Ishikawa, crouched behind the burnt-out hulk of an AG platform just ahead. She had to scream to be heard over the din. "I've got 2 JPB satchels enough to blow the door. Give the word." Brennan keyed his comm. "All units, this is Bulldog. We are breaching the control room on my mark. Shift fires, suppress the right flank. JPB is up. On 3-2-1 mark." Every gun swung right, blanketing the Krol'thar there in a monsoon of munitions. Ishikawa dashed from cover in a dead sprint, satchel charges clutched tight. Plasma bolts and pulse rounds stitched the deck all around her as she closed the distance to the blast door. It was suicide close to the objective. The corporal shouted in defiance as she slapped the demo charges into place and thumbed the backup fuse as the remote dick clicked uselessly. She dove away as the timer counted to 0. A tremendous explosion shook the concourse. The door vanished in a maelstrom of fire and smoke and shrapnel, blowing inward. Ishikawa rolled to her feet, flash-blind and reeling but alive. "Go now," Brennan roared. "Everyone forward." The Krol'thar reacted an instant too slow. The Allies poured through the still-smoking breach into the control room, gunning down the stunned defenders. Consoles exploded into flames around them. "Tech team up," Brennan called. "Get that virus uploaded. Hold the doors." The AZU computer specialist sprinted to the primary junction, shoving spindly fingers into the input slots. Brennan and the other survivors spread out, covering the blasted entryway and the other exits. Tense seconds ticked by as the AZU worked furiously. The Krol'thar rallied swiftly, hurling themselves at the occupied room in a frenzy. "Firewall bypass at 60%, one of the gray-skinned aliens reported in a clipped burst of intergalactic standard. 70%, 80%. A plasma bolt struck Brennan's thigh, burning through his fatigues. He gasped in agony but kept firing, cutting down a charging Krol'thar mere meters from the breach. 90%. Download completed. Initiating viral attack. A chorus of furious screeches rose from every Krol'thar throat as the virus propagated through their systems, crashing computers and overloading critical functions. Damage reports flooded the screen's weapons offline, engines failing, life support critical. The mighty station shuddered as secondary explosions rippled through its superstructure. Brennan allowed himself a fierce grin of triumph. They'd done it. It was over. But that grin died as he saw the mass of Krol'thar warriors still pouring into the concourse. They knew they were doomed, and they clearly meant to take the Allies with them. "Fall back," the Saurian major called. "All units, fighting retreat to evac pods. Go!" The ragtag force disengaged, laying down covering fire as they withdrew back across the blood-slicked deck. Brennan limped heavily, gritting his teeth against the pain of his wound. Green moved to support him, but Brennan waved him off. "I'll make it. Help the others." They leapfrogged from cover to cover, making the Krol'thar pay for every meter. Ishikawa took a round through the shoulder, crying out as she crumpled to the deck. Brennan scooped her up with a surge of adrenaline and staggered on. At last they reached the evac area, a cluster of docked boarding pods. Allied troops were piling in, some supporting wounded comrades, some still firing defiantly back at the press of enemies. Brennan hauled himself and Ishikawa through the nearest hatch and dumped her into a crash seat, collapsing beside her. "Where's the major?" he croaked. Green, last man aboard, slammed his fist on the hatch control. "Didn't make it. Rear guard to the end. Got us the time we needed." Brennan pounded a bulkhead in frustration and grief. Another good soldier lost. But no time to mourn. Punch it. All pods undock and max burn. The pod shook as the docking clamps disengaged and the engines flared to life. The acceleration crushed them back into their seats as it hurtled away from the dying station, the other pods visible through the ports. Brennan linked into the Allied battle net, listening to the cacophony of voices. The fleet was mopping up the last of the Krol'thar capital ships, their coordination in tatters without the central hub. Cries of victory echoed across the net. As the pod streaked toward the waiting ships of the relief flotilla, Brennan finally let the enormity of the day crash over him like a wave. The pain, the exhaustion, the losses, Davis, the major, so many others. But also the pride, the camaraderie, the knowledge that they'd struck a blow for humanity and its allies that would resound across the stars. The Krol'thar would think twice before rolling over another world with the beating they'd taken here. He looked around at the survivors: Green, Ishikawa, Alvarez, the Saurians, and Heizu. They were battered and bleeding, caked in alien filth, eyes haunted by what they'd endured. But they were alive. They had done the impossible. They were heroes, everyone. "Marines," Brennan said, meeting each of their gazes in turn, "it has been an honor." The med-techs swarmed them as soon as the pod set down in the flotilla's hangar bay, whisking the more grievously wounded away to surgery. Brennan waved off the corpsmen, content to let them tend to the others first. The stim shot he'd jabbed into his thigh was keeping the worst of the pain at bay for now. As he watched Ishikawa and Alvarez vanish through the hatch on grav stretchers, a familiar figure strode across the deck towards him: Captain Singh, HDF Intelligence. The slim Indian woman still wore her impeccable black uniform, not a hair out of place, as if she hadn't just coordinated the largest joint op in human history from the flag bridge. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed the strain. Brennan started to struggle to attention, but Singh stopped him with a raised hand. "As you were, Sergeant. You've damn well earned a rest." "We did what you asked, Mom," Brennan said wearily. "Op was a success. Station secured, Krol'thar network in shambles." "That you did, Marine." Exceeded all projections. Singh's dark eyes appraised him keenly. "Your unit performed exceptionally. The sacrifices made were not in vain. This is a turning point." Brennan met her gaze levelly. "Davis, Major K. all the others, they're the real heroes. They gave everything." Singh nodded somberly. "And they will be remembered, as will you all. What you've done here may very well change the course of the war. The Krol'thar will be reeling after this blow." "Respectfully, sir, what's our next move? We can't let up the pressure now." A ghost of a smile touched Singh's lips, ever the warrior. "No, we cannot. Even now, our forces are launching attacks on a dozen Krol'thar worlds to press the advantage. We will roll back their foul empire, system by system if need be, until they are driven back to their wretched home world. This is the beginning of their end." She held out a hand. "Your part in this fight is over, Sergeant. You and your Marines have earned some rest. And if I have my way, and I usually do some shiny new medals to hang on those battle-scarred chests, we'll need you sharp for the next round." Brennan managed a tight grin as he shook her hand. "Wouldn't miss it, sir." Singh turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Sergeant Brennan? On a personal note, thank you. Thank you for bringing our people home. As many as you could." With that, she strode away towards the next crisis and the battles to come. Brennan watched her go, then let the waiting courtman lead him off to the med bay to let the doctors put him back together again. There would be time to mourn the fallen, Brennan knew, in the days and weeks ahead as the shockwaves of their victory spread. Time to heal, to regroup, to gird for the next fight. The war was far from over. But they had struck a decisive blow today and shown the galaxy the metal that humanity and its allies were made of. The Krol'thar had learned a hard lesson at the hands of the Marines that no matter the odds, no matter the cost, there were some lines in the stars that could not be crossed, not without consequence. And humanity would make them pay that price, down to the last iota of blood. Brennan leaned back on the gurney as the painkillers began to take hold, dragging him down into blissful oblivion. His last conscious thought, before exhaustion claimed him at last, was that Davis would have liked that. The kid always did enjoy a good heroic speech. Brennan would just have to remember to give it again at the memorial. But that was for tomorrow. Today they could rest easy, the heroes of the line.